We're going to get going with today's message, and I've got a special robe here that I'm not going to undress myself, so I'm going to put this on for you. Now, I don't know if you've got a lot of experience staying at nice hotels. I'll be honest, I don't. But the rumor is that the amenities in these hotels are incredible. And the service is amazing, and the food is top-notch, and the mattresses that you get to sleep on are unbelievable. And another characteristic of a really, really nice hotel is often a white robe. When you walk into a hotel room and you see a white robe that's been made available to you, there are some things that robe communicates to you, whether you realize it or not. Just as an example, if you get hungry in the middle of the night, you don't have to go, blindly half asleep down into your refrigerator trying to put together some cereal to eat. No, you can just call someone and they'll bring you something. And they could bring you something like filet mignon or lobster tail. They'll bring you whatever you want. It's unbelievable. They just bring it to you. And then if you're feeling, I don't know, just a little lazy and you don't want to set your alarm clock, if you're at one of these nice hotels, you could just call somebody else and they'll call you and wake you up. You don't even have to set your alarm for that. And then, it just keeps getting better. You can just let the hot water run in your shower. It never runs out. You just sit in there as long as you want and just let that water cascade upon you. And then guess what? The shampoo, you can just pour as much of it on you as you want, and conditioner and soap, because there's going to be more of it that replaces what you use. Because the people there are there to serve you. And then if you want a newspaper that you can actually touch, they'll just bring it to your door and just leave it there whenever you want it. And then it just keeps getting better. If perhaps you're looking at your toenails and they're a little long, you can clip those toenails and you don't even have to pick up the nail clippings. Somebody else will just come along and do it for you. Because whenever you've got a robe like this made available to you and you're at that kind of a hotel, they are there to serve you. That in many ways represents the life that many of us in this world are striving for. A world in which we are getting served and taken care of, and all of our needs are met. But this isn't the life that Jesus called us to live and to strive for. The life of wearing a robe is much different than the life that Jesus called all of his followers to live. What he called us to live is he said this, even I haven't come to be served, but I've come to serve and to give my life as a ransom for many. I've come to serve and to give. In other words, he came to turn upside down the standards and the values of this world, and to say that his kingdom wouldn't be about being served. His kingdom is about serving others. And when it comes to, I think, a lot of the discomfort, maybe discontentment that some of us experience in life, maybe even a sense in which we haven't accomplished enough, we haven't arrived, that there's another level of greatness still for us to get to, we wouldn't say it like this. I know that. I know your heart. I know you wouldn't say it like this, but it comes back to this idea. Because greatness in the world, by the world's standards, is fundamentally based upon not how many people you serve, but how many people serve you. And you know you're great. You know you've arrived when there are a lot of people there who are serving you. And Jesus said, you'll never arrive if that's your target for greatness. You'll never get to a place of contentment if that is your focus, if that is your goal. Instead, your goal, my goal, needs to be how many people can we serve? We need to stop trying to pursue a robe-wearing lifestyle, and we got to take off the robe, put it down. And as we're going to see in John chapter 13, what Jesus is going to present to us there is one in which he doesn't wear a robe. Instead, he bears a towel. And he says that greatness is going to be found in the example that he sets for all of us. And that's an example to serve others, to place others' needs ahead of your own. And I'll go ahead and let the cat out of the bag a little bit on this. Where we are going with this, is that there are tremendous opportunities to serve people here in this church. And what I want to encourage you to do is to have a mind that is open, a heart that is clear to whatever it is that God might be leading you towards. That may be for you, certainly for me. I have been wearing a robe far too much in my life, and I need to take it off, and I need to be open to how it is that God is calling me to serve this church better and to serve people in my community better. In other words, God's calling me not to wear a robe, but again, to bear a towel. And that's what we find from Jesus again in John chapter 13. And I'm going to pick up there. And some of the context that we have to understand here is that they're in an upper room. Jesus is within 24 hours of losing his life. And he has one last moment to teach his disciples one last lesson. But this isn't going to be a lesson of words. It is going to be a lesson of an object, of a towel and a basin and water. And he's going to do what none of them were ever going to be willing to do. He's going to humble himself in a way that they can't even imagine someone that they are following would do. But that's exactly what he does. And this is where the text picks up. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world. In other words, he knew that the time had come for him to die. And it wasn't going to be a pretty death. It was going to be a death that was creating anxiety in him. And he knew that the time for that had finally come, to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. In other words, he was going to see this through all the way. The evening meal was in progress. And the devil had already prompted Judas. The devil had already tempted him. Judas took the bait. And now he's going to betray Jesus, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. I mean, as you think about that right there, Jesus has all the power in all of the world, and he's getting ready to do something. And what he's going to do, I've already told you, is he's going to serve them. And this is just an unbelievable, unimaginable proposition, because the Creator is stooping down to serve the creation. The one who had everything is going to empty himself to nothing. The one who is the greatest is going to become the least. But it's not even amongst people who deserve it. It's amongst people who are going to hurt him. He's going to wash the feet of a guy who betrayed him, who's going to betray him. He's going to wash the feet of another one who's going to deny him right in his face. He's going to wash the feet of 10 others who abandon him. Because when it comes to bearing a towel, we have to ask, why would Jesus do that? And the reason that Jesus would do that is because towel bearers are willing to serve everyone. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, I like to help people who help me. I like to help people who help themselves. But it's kind of hard to help someone who hurts me. Maybe you can relate to that. Because how do you serve a husband who has never been thoughtful of your needs one day in his life? That's what it means to bear a towel. How do you serve a wife who never stops and says, I appreciate everything that you've done for this family? How do you serve a child who never wraps their arms around your neck and says, thank you? How do you serve a coworker who talks behind your back, or a neighbor who is always taking and never giving? How do you serve a father who, no matter what you do, it's not good enough? How do you serve when you feel unappreciated and unnoticed by the people around you? How do you do this? Well, it's pretty hard, because there is this fleshly side of all of us that doesn't want to do it. But the Apostle Paul says to us, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free. But do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Because you know what? If you harbor those resentful feelings, and you know what? If you try to get even, maybe you do get even. You're still going to heaven. You're still going to be forgiven. There's still grace for you. But the Apostle Paul says, don't indulge the flesh. Don't give in to that level of resentment. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. Yeah, I don't know what your relationship is with your neighbors. Mine has always been pretty good. But recently, just in the last couple of months, we had a new neighbor come next to us as she moved in. And so we had some initial interactions that were pretty positive. And then I noticed this unusual habit of hers. She would always park her car in front of my house. And once or twice, it wasn't a big deal. It was fine. I mean, it didn't make a lot of sense because the front of her house was wide open. Her driveway was open. Her garage was open. But somehow she just kept parking in front of my house. And I thought, well, that's a little odd. That's strange. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 2 weeks go by. She's still parking in front of my house, just parking right there. No reason for her to park because her house was wide open, driveway, front of her house, all of it. She could go anywhere, but she somehow lands right in front of my house. Well, one day I come home and I want to park in front of my house because I always park in front of my house. We have a narrow driveway, and my wife needs room to back out, and then my kids like to play in the driveway sometimes, or at the very least they're coming out of the garage on their bikes, and it's a little challenging trying to sort around my car. And at any rate, I always park in front of my house, but I haven't been able to because she keeps parking in front of my house. Well, I come home and I'm like, all right, this is too much. 2 weeks, man, this is crazy. I need to do. We gotta have a conversation. And I know. It's not like an assigned spot. I know it's not my spot. I know there's really not a lot you can do about it, but it's just about being a considerate neighbor. Like, quit parking in front of my house. So I go over to her, and she just happened to be outside, and she's like, hey, Phil. And I'm like, hey, I need to park in front of my house. Would you please move your car? And then she starts, she didn't appreciate that. And I'm thinking, well, I haven't appreciated this car being in front of my house for 2 weeks. So I need to be able to park in front of my house because I want my kids to be able to play in my driveway, et cetera, et cetera. And then she just keeps kind of chirping at me as she's walking. She's frustrated. She's mad. She's like, I didn't realize we had assigned parking spots in front of our house. I didn't know I couldn't park there. I thought the street was wide open. I'm like, the street is wide open. I just don't want you parking in front of my house. And I like, so I'm like, I'm frustrated. She's frustrated, but she moves her car. And obviously there's some tension as a result of this interaction that we've had. And so, a couple weeks go by. We aren't talking. Probably won't ever talk again at that point. And then I hear that she's like gossiping about me to the neighbors and just saying all sorts of mean things. And it's all good. Just kind of going with the flow. And then there's this day that I'm out and I'm trying to spray for the weeds. And we've got rocks that separate our properties. And there's these weeds coming up. And they don't really come up. They just go out. And they're primarily coming out from her side of the rocks. So I'm spraying. And I know where our property line is. And I don't think she knows, but I know. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, man. And it's like, just through gritted teeth, I'm sitting there thinking, like, I really don't want to spray over on her side because that's not my responsibility. But I'm just kind of spraying, and there isn't a lot of weed killer in the container I have, and I'm spraying on my side, spraying, and I'm just like, okay, I'll throw some drops over there. I just give in. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to help out a little bit. And I'm spraying. And then all of a sudden I hear this, thank you, Phil. And I'm kind of looking around. And then there was my neighbor up in the window. And she said, thank you for spraying. Thank you for doing that. And I'm like, oh, yep, no problem. Easy. It was my heart just really wanted to do this for you. So I spray up all my weed killer for her. And the relationship went from being very tense to now that interaction's a distant memory that we initially had. And she doesn't bother with parking in front of my house anymore. And we talk a little bit when we see each other, and there's no more tension. Everything's good. And it wasn't easy. But why is it that way? It was because I was willing to help her even though I didn't want to. The relationship was restored because I was willing to, through gritted teeth, serve her. And maybe that's a posture that might help you with some of the tension you're dealing with some people. Maybe that's a posture that might help you with a spouse or with your children or even with an inconsiderate neighbor for that matter. Maybe that would just help God's kingdom to come more into this world if Christians were willing to put down the robe, because it's not all about what people do for us, and to pick up the towel and say, how can I serve you? And that's what Jesus does. He looks into this room of people who he knew were going to abandon him, betray him, and deny him. And he gets down on his feet. And as we're going to see in a moment, he begins to wash their feet. And understand, there weren't sewer systems. Their feet were muddy, and they had all kinds of germs on them, and we're worried about COVID. I mean, they had stuff that would like kill you immediately roaming through their streets. I mean, it was terrible what was going on that would have been on their feet, and Jesus gets on their feet, gets down and begins to wash their feet. And as our text goes on, it says, so he got up from the meal because he saw no one else had washed the feet. He took off his outer clothing and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. So again, this was a job that was reserved for the lowest of the servants, probably a slave, and the one who is the greatest in the room gets down, becomes a towel bearer, and he decides to meet the need that was before him. There was a need that was there. He didn't want to teach him a lesson. He wasn't worried about performing a miracle. It was a menial task that anybody could do, but it was a need that needed to be met. And as I've talked with people, and some of you and many others at other churches, what I've found is that there's a tendency of ours to just want to serve where we have experience, to just serve to give a little where we've, got a skill set that we maybe developed. For example, a few years ago, I was an associate pastor at a church, and we were a fairly large church, and the church was growing significantly, and we were at a point where we really needed to recruit some volunteers, kind of like where we're at right now at this church. We needed to get some people in place to support ministries and also to help people get more connected at the church. So we were we were in a process of a big push to recruit volunteers. And it was kind of stressful because I was primarily responsible for it. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a guy, though. I was talking with him, and I was simply just talking with him about being a greeter. That's it. Just open the door, greet people. That's all you got to do. I mean, that's like as basic entry level as it gets when it comes to serving. Very important. Very, very important. Don't want to undermine that. But it was just an entry level service opportunity. And he did counseling as a profession. And this is what his response was to me. He said, if I'm opening a door, I don't feel like my skills are being utilized. But if you have anyone on staff who needs counseling, that's how I'd like to serve. I'm thinking, I got to recruit volunteers. I'm going to need counseling if I don't get people serving here. And he's worried about counseling the staff, which is significant. It needs to be done like maybe every few years. I need people opening up doors every Sunday, and you're worried about counseling? But there's a part of us that's like that. And it starts at a young age. I don't know if you've noticed this. It really does start at a very, very young age for us, like as a baby. And this is totally understandable. Baby, feed me, change me, hold me, meet all my needs. And then we grow up a little bit, teen, adult children. Some of you have got those. Maybe you are one of those. But we have these same expectations. Pay for my phone, pay for my phone, pay for my car, pay for my college, pay for my wedding, watch my kids. I mean, come on now. I mean, I know like all of you are very supportive of your kids and your grandkids, but 4 date nights in a week's a little much. Like We got expectations of our spouse. Meet my needs. Take care of me. Make me happy. We got expectations of God. Make me happy. Make me smarter. Make me successful. Give me more money. Got expectations of our church. Feed me. Serve me. Meet my needs. Take care of my kids. Call me. Text me. Notice me. It just goes on and on and on. But the mark of spiritual immaturity is meet my needs. While the mark of spiritual maturity is how can I meet your needs? And maybe one of the biggest shifts that we need to have take place in our hearts is that we really want to meet the needs of those who are around us. We really want to sign up in a ministry that may not necessarily fit our college degree. But man, it's going to meet a need. And there's going to be some kids that are blessed by it. And there's going to be some people that want to be a part of this community because of what you do. And you're just going to die to yourself a little bit. Because that's what gets in the way of our spiritual maturity more often than not. It's not the sermon. Man, it's often ourselves. It's that we're so worried about ourselves and our needs that we aren't willing to help meet the needs of others. The Apostle John said this to us. This is how we know what love is. That Jesus Christ laid his life down for us. And we ought to lay our lives down for brothers and sisters. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words and speech, but with actions and in truth. And so we got to be willing to hold the towel and to meet the need that is in front of us just like Jesus. And then the text that goes on. He came, Jesus, to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? And Jesus replied, you do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand. Jesus is doing this incredible service to Peter. And Peter doesn't even recognize it. You been there? Helped somebody, served somebody, loved somebody, cared for somebody, gave money to somebody, and it was just like they didn't even acknowledge what you were doing. When it comes to being a towelbearer, towelbearers do not seek recognition. Whenever you look in the book of Acts, there's a story of Ananias and Sapphira, and it's really this wild story of these people who were struck down at the very beginning of the church beginning. But they came before the apostles, and as they came before the apostles, they came with money. And they lied. They sold some land. They gave part of the proceeds to the church, but they said they gave it all to the church. They did that because they were seeking recognition. Their heart wasn't in the right place. And often we can have that same tendency. Galatians says this, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of, or Matthew says this, your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. In other words, don't be righteous. Don't do the right things because you want others to recognize it. And then again, in Galatians, am I now trying to win the approval of human beings, the Apostle Paul says, or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. In other words, you cannot desire recognition and still really serve Christ, because what you're really doing is serving yourself. I have a mentor of mine, good friend of mine. His name's Kyle Eidelman. And he'll pop in periodically and has come here to preach. And one of the most important lessons he taught me very early on in ministry as I worked for him for a period of time was that you have to do this, like what I do, for an audience of one. He said, you got to do it for an audience of one. If you're doing it for people and their attention and their recognition and whatever it is that they may say to you, you will be sorely disappointed. Because he said there were days, he was at a smaller church, he put 30 hours into a sermon, and he didn't even have 2 or 3 people come and tell him it was a good job. And he said he felt a lot of resentment because of that. And then he read this verse. He talked to some mentors of his. What it came down to was he has to do it for an audience of one. And God is that audience. He had to focus on serving for the Lord as he was serving people and not serving himself as he was serving people to get their recognition. We've got to do it for an audience of one. And towel bearers are only focused on God and his purposes and not what it is that people think of what it is that we are doing. And the text goes on, "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." And Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." And Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him. And that was why he said not everyone was clean. And when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I've done for you?" Jesus said. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is exactly what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you." I have set you an example that this is the way you are supposed to live your life. You see, when it comes to being a towel bearer like Jesus, it's not a one-time action. It's not just a seasonal thing that we do. It's certainly not something we do when we feel like it. A towel bearer sees service as a way of life. It's just who we are. And we're always looking for opportunities to do that. Now, I'm going to show you a video here in a moment. And it's a video from our children's ministry. And the reason that we're highlighting this particular ministry of opportunity to serve in is because that's really where our greatest need is right now as a church. September the 12th, we're going to begin offering children's ministry at both services. And I'll be as honest with you as I can. The number one thing holding back our church right now, and we have a lot of great things going for us, the number one thing holding us back, we don't have children's ministry in our second service. We have had people who did attend here, who stopped attending here because we haven't been able to provide that. We have people who would attend here, but they don't because we don't have children's ministry in the second service. And the time has come that we've got to offer that again. These parents, these children, these families need to be ministered to. And so we're going to do that. The deal with this point that I want to say here before we see this video is there's a tendency of ours to say, I put in my time, right? But the truth is, we never fully put in our time. The truth is that Jesus has called us to this our entire lives. And when we lay down our life to live for him, it's unbelievably fulfilling. So why don't you go ahead and cue up that video and play it for everybody, and you'll see a little bit of what it is I'm talking about.
Children are one of the church's biggest resources. It's very important for them to start at an early age getting a really strong foundation in faith. So I think it's really important for us to invest that time and effort into helping them grow spiritually. When I look back at all the years since I accepted Jesus into my life, working with children in the context of church has been the number one factor in helping me grow spiritually.
The best part of working with kids for me is seeing our 3-year-old son throughout the week start to sing songs and share truths that he learned on Sunday school with us.
I've really been encouraged by just the week in and week out of what kids are learning and what my own kids are learning and the great conversations I've been able to have with them in the car. I can just say, you know, in the middle of a busy work week, there are times I get home right before I have to go to Kids Life, and there were many weeks that I was thinking, man, I don't want to do this. But there wasn't a week that by the time I got there and by the time we started going with kids that it just doesn't light a renewed fire in my heart and in my soul, and just being able to meet those kids and just have fun with them.
The best part of working with the kids, I have to say, is when we start out, we have this opening song and the kids just have so much energy. We dance around, we have fun, there's tons of smiles. It's always something I look forward to when I know we're going to be teaching.
All ages volunteer. I love seeing the teens with the kids. I love seeing the relationships formed. I love seeing the teens' faith grow through the kids. The best part of working with kids is the kids. It's getting to know the kids, it's seeing the joy in the kids' faces.
They're just always so happy, having so much fun, and they all have a really big love for God. I feel like they always leave here with something. I really learned and realized how much of an influence I can have on them in their relationship with God.
I'm glad that I learned how to have like a childlike faith. I feel like that's something that's talked about a lot in the Bible, but the more you see it in just these tiny like 1 and 2 year olds, the more you really get to see just how much they trust in adults and how much we can trust in God.
The biggest reason I volunteer is because I really like just helping other people, and I see how these kids can really grow and help and like do other good things with support. I never saw myself as a baby whisperer, but here we are.
I'm in my 60s and thought maybe I was too old. Nope. Oh my gosh, what a blessing this last year on Wednesday nights. That's when I helped out. I helped with the 3 through 5 year olds, and it was wonderful. It was crazy. They like to have fun, and we played a lot of games with them too. If you're contemplating where to plug in, pray. The Lord helps you to know where to do that. It's something I had to do for a while because I kept thinking, I've had bad back issues for a long time. I'm certainly not physically able to do this. Wrong again. I was completely blessed. I was able to do it, and I encourage you.
I run the games, the game program. It's been great for me to have this opportunity to jump in and help, to watch these kids grow, learn more about God, and grow in their faith in Him. The kids build confidence during game time. They have so much energy. I have a little one, and I get to serve him as well.
I serve because it fills me up. I might have a rough week, and I'll come in and I'll see the little children and their love and the energy and their excitement, and it just feeds me. Psalm 127:3 says, "Children are a gift from God, and they are His reward." And I truly feel like that. As I'm sharing the Word of God, God is filling me up in the process, and I absolutely love that.
We really got to see the growth that they had with the Lord, and several of the kids accepted the Lord, and that was very rewarding. And I would highly recommend it for anybody really of any age, because investing in children, we can never regret that.
Yeah, so there are going to be, might give me some light here. It says that there's going to be many opportunities for you to plug in here at the church. Our children's ministry is one of them, and you'll learn about those out in our lobby area, whether it's our children's ministry or student ministry with the adults, whether you're helping with hosting or greeters. Maybe you want to do Valley View Cares, which is our food pantry on Fridays and Saturdays. There's lots of opportunities, and we'd love to get you plugged into those. I want to bring this thing full circle, though. You see, the Bible actually talks about a white robe. I don't know if you know this, but an interesting thing happens. The Bible teaches us that if we're willing to lay down our robe in this life and pick up a towel, that we actually get a robe in the next life. Revelation chapter 7 says, "After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands. And they cried out in a loud voice, 'Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb.'" You see, in this world, if you want a white robe, it's all about you getting served. What's amazing, though, is in the next life, what we realize is we get a white robe. And it's not about our accomplishments, it's not about our achievements, it's not about how great we are. We get a robe because of how great Jesus was. And the fact that He died for every single one of your shortcomings, mistakes, sins, and all of that is washed clean, white as snow, by the blood of the Lamb. And that is how He served every single one of you, and He set that example for you. We're going to have a time of communion, and it's in this time of communion in which you take that packet that you were given. The juice represents His blood that was shed. The cracker represents His body that was broken. And it's there that we remember. And you take a few moments as our team continues to lead us in worship, to remember the sacrifice, the service that Jesus displayed for each and every one of us. The white robe that he's made available to you one day in heaven because he loved you so much that he was willing to die for you. Let's pray. We'll have our time of communion and we'll continue to lead our church in worship. Gracious Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for the example you set us in Christ, the love that you've displayed for us in him. Father, open our hearts, open our minds, Lord, to how you would have us to take next steps in our lives, to be more of a servant, to follow in your examples, not so that we might receive recognition, but so that we would offer appreciation for all you've given us in Jesus. And it's in his name we pray. Amen.